And so I told you last Sunday that I want the whole service to be the sermon this morning, and that's what we're going to attempt. We're going to attempt that the whole service is the sermon this morning. And you're like, okay, but thank you. And so if you will stand as we read God's word together. If you have a Bible, turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 25. If you don't have a Bible, if you could throw that page number on the screen, there's a Bible in the pew in front of you, and the page number will get you pretty close, if not right on it. Matthew, there we go, 25. Let's talk about money today, which is always fun. Matthew 25, we'll start reading at verse 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went out at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. Also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. The master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I do not sow and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that then when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the bag with gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For those who have will be given more, and they who will have an abundance. As for those who do not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Harsh words this morning from Jesus. Doesn't that make you excited? Okay, and I think by the end you will be a little excited. Next slide. This is the word of God for the people of God, and you said, thanks be to God. Let's sing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, remember the whole service is the sermon, so you never know when I'm going to talk and who else is going to talk and when we're going to do an offering. The whole service is the sermon this morning. I want to talk to you a little bit about the local church, how important the local church is. The local church, we just sang about it, is the hope of the world. Some of us believe that, and we'd be great if we all believed that. Let me say it one more time. The local church is the hope of the world. You don't have to clap, but now we do a lot of things. We do a lot of things that make it to where it may not seem like it's the hope of the world. But the local church, living, breathing, speaking, acting like Jesus, and like Jesus called us to live, is the hope of the world. Now, Andy Stanley, who is a pastor in Atlanta, a big church in Atlanta called North Point Community Church, he takes it even further, and I think I believe with him. He says this, that as the church goes, so the nation goes. Strong church, strong nation. If you take the church out of the nation, or you would take the local church out of a community, what should happen is the community should not be as good as it was before. Jesus called us to be salt and light. He called us to be to bring flavor to the world and light, to light up what was good and what was great. And so, strong church, strong nation. This is the meaning, once again, when Jesus says we are to be salt and light. Now, I'm not sure that the definition of church, now hear me, I'm not sure that the technical definition of church is a group of people who meet at a certain place to sing, hear preaching, and give an offering. Okay, maybe some of us, it's not what happens here at 10:30 on a Sunday morning. That this is not the church. It is part of the church, but it is not the church. I think it's better to say that the church are those people who are truly following after Jesus with everything that they are. And we meet it in different places, in different cities around the country and around the world. And it looks different in different cities and different places and different countries around the world. The church is the only organization, I'm making some bold statements this morning, but I believe it. The church is the only organization in the world that inspires people to live for something bigger. The government doesn't do that. It really isn't supposed to. The government's supposed to tell us how low we can go before we go to jail, to set up rules, to keep order. The government is not meant to inspire people. The local church inspires people. The school doesn't do it. It used to, but for whatever reason now it doesn't seem to inspire. It seems to, okay, we just got to get to this level. And it's not the teacher's fault. It's not their fault. They're doing what they are told to do. But so the school doesn't inspire for something higher. The church is what inspires us to be and to live for something bigger than ourselves. The church saved my life. A lot of people get up and testify and say, I don't have a good testimony because I didn't do drugs and I didn't smoke and I didn't drink. And some of you, that is your testimony, and that's awesome. But for some of us, we didn't ever participate in those things. And our testimony is that God saved us, and that the local church had a role in shaping us, and forming us, and making us the people that we are today. It guided me. It taught me how to be generous, and not charity, but generous. And the church doesn't always teach that sometimes, though. The church teaches us the only thing. You ready for this? The church teaches the only thing that's going to bring about change in our country. To love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Can you imagine if everybody in our country, even if they just did the second one, to love your neighbor and to treat your neighbor as you would want to be treated, if everybody did that, what a difference our political system would be. The policeman would just make sure traffic is flowing. Make sure the red lights are working and that street signs don't blow over, because we would be treating everybody else like we would want to be treated. The local church is so important, to love your neighbor as yourself. If everybody did that, what a different world we would live in. The church exists to make a difference in the culture that we find ourselves in and in people's lives that we come in contact with every when we lose the understanding that God wants this place to be lived like Jesus taught us to live, then we miss the entire message of who he's calling us to be. The local church is the hope of the world. I'm going to bring a couple people up, and we're going to hear their story. Matt and Robin, if you guys would join me on the platform. And now, Matt and Robin, most of you know them and have had the privilege of, if you guys would hold a mic just so the video can hear you. So what I want you to do is, you said you're not talking, but I think you might. Just tell us how you started and were a part of this church. How do we first meet?
A couple years ago, we were looking for a place to practice. I coached the junior high baseball team at Paulding. The school kind of shut us down, so I seen this big building here all the time, never knew what was in it. And I made a phone call, and I think Tara called me back, and you guys offered us a place to practice. That's how I met you, met Tara. You invited us to church, so we came to church, and we loved it. Then. That's how.
You loved it then, but now is a different story?
Oh, love it even more now.
So we loved it then, and you make us still come. No, so you started. I remember when we first met, and and you're like, maybe you've heard of Grass Chopper Lawns, and I was like, I've only been here for a year. I'm not sure I have, but sure, and sounds good. And so I would come over before and after practice. We would hang out and talk and about football and all kinds of stuff. And then, can you tell us a little bit about the journey after that, and just what this church has meant for your family, for you as maybe for your kids, and what that looks like, and how this church has spoken into your life, maybe? Can you share a little bit of that journey and what the story is about?
How long do I got?
Just take your time.
June 9th last year, very difficult day. You were one of the first phone calls I made when we lost Skylar. And the way this church, all of you, I don't want to name any names because I'll forget somebody, stepped up and helped us through a difficult time. We became very active, attending the church. We needed God more then than we ever needed Him before to figure this out. And for me to make a phone call to you, not being a member here, and for you to be there in a flash, it seemed like, to offer support, to offer up the building for the service, the meal, everything that you guys did for us, we'll never be able to say thank you enough for it. We just started coming after that, and felt like we were wanted here, welcomed here by each and every one of you. And it became like family, and we needed that more then. Now, it's a long process. I'm still not there. It's going to be a while, but we're trying to figure this all out, and with your guys' support, we're going to figure it out. With your help, this grief share group is happening. So many good things. The Vacation Bible School, we're active in so many things that we weren't before. It makes us feel good that we're giving back as much as we can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe in a few words, if you can. So here's what's cool about Matt and Robin. They've already started a ministry in our church. And this ministry had 6 people from our church and 15 people from the community come to this ministry. As a pastor, if you want to start a ministry that's 6 people from our church and 15 from other, go for it. You have my blessing. What ways, maybe for your kids, I know Kendall, can you talk a little bit about your kids and what maybe it's been, and maybe even for Nate and youth group? I know you maybe don't want to speak on their behalf, but just what it's meant for them.
Just the things that they're active in. They hear the word. Kendall, some of the questions you get from her, I don't even know how you answer them, to be honest with you. She's a sponge. All little ones are. And the things that she's bringing home now, we're blessed to be here. She's pretty awesome.
You send me videos all the time of her singing
Oh,
the songs that we sing. Yeah,
you
right?
burn us a couple CDs, so all these songs that we sing in church, she's just rocking it out in the car. Wherever we go, she's singing everything. She's a little shy in the pew, but
right,
when she cuts loose, one of these days she's going to jump up here and grab a mic.
I don't know that she has a shy bone in her body, but yeah, she comes to me with questions about
deep.
God. Yeah,
Very
questions, deep. And so she is learning, and Nate is loving it. And he brings friends to church all the time, and so that's the local church is the hope of the world. When people are in dire circumstances, the way they find hope is not to go to their governor and not to go to the mayor. They find it in people who are going to love them and encourage them on the way that Jesus has brought them. An example. And let's dive into this passage together, Matthew 25. And as I was looking through this, I normally don't do this, but I've got 3 points today, or 3 instances, and that's not normally my style of delivery, but today it just seemed appropriate. And so we're going to look at the first 2, and then we're going to do a few other things, and then we'll look at the last one and a few more moments after that. So the first point for today, next slide. It is important how we view the good things we have. We have to view them as a gift. When we do that, it changes everything. Next slide, this quote is from a guy named Stanley Hauerwas. This passage is a judgment against those who think they deserve what they have earned, as well as those who do not know how precious is the gift they have been given. The slaves did nothing to earn this. The master gave it to them. That's a big deal. And so because they viewed it as a gift from the master, and how they, in a few moments, we're going to look at this, how they viewed the master, but because they viewed it as a gift, it changed and it was easier potentially to give away rather than understanding it that it was a possession for me to own and use and manipulate for my good rather than for his good. The slaves did not earn their 5, 2, or 1 talent. They've been given those talents. Now, a talent, my version of the Bible I read this morning had gold, bags of gold. A talent is actually a measure of money. And this is how big it is. 15 years of wages. Wow. That's when Jesus said this. People were like, that's a lot of money. So the one who got 5 talents, 45 years. Retirement, right? 45 years of wages this guy was given. The guy who got 2, 30 years of wages this guy was given. And the one who got 1, 15. But they did nothing. The master gave it to them. Now we could look at it and say, well, it's unfair. The one got 5, the one got 3 or 2, and the one got 1. But it really isn't unfair. It's crucial. And Harwa says this, but it's not on the slide. It's crucial. It's not as to how much they got, but how they regarded what they had been given. This parable is not about how much you have. It's about what you do with what you've been given. It has nothing to do with the amounts and everything to do with what you have. So the next slide. So the slave with the 1 talent feared losing what he had been given. With the result is he tried to turn the gift into a possession. The master has given me this, and now it's mine. And I don't want to lose what is mine. Therefore, I'm going to go hide it so that I don't run the risk of it leaving my possession. When if he just viewed it as a gift to begin with, something he didn't have before and now he does have, it would have been a whole lot easier to do something with it. So sometimes it's how we view our things. So we have stuff and I earned it and it's mine. And we have to have a good perspective on everything that we have is a gift from God. It's what God has given me. Which leads to the second point. Point number 2. God is not asking us to do anything. He will not also supply us with the provision, strength, and wisdom to do. He's not asking us to do anything that he's not going to give us what we need to do it. And so if God's put something on your heart, I really want to help those people. Guess what? If it's from God, you will have the ability to help those people and have everything that you need to help those people. He's not going to give you a vision or a dream so that you can fail. If it's really from God and it's not just something you want to do so that other people can look at you and say, that is so good that you did it. Once again, that's about me, what I'm getting and what I deserve. If it's really God honoring and it's something that you have and you think, man, I don't care who sees me. I don't care who knows. I have got to do this for God and his kingdom. He'll provide whatever you need to get that done. He'll provide it. And so it's about holding loosely and realizing that every good thing we have, we say it every morning, I say it every Sunday morning, every good thing we have is a gift from God. And so it's not about the amount, it's not about how talented you are, it's not about any of that. It's about what you do with what God has given you. Stephen Manley says this, it's not the amount that places the master, it's the faith. It's not the amount that they made, it's the faith that God had given them the gift, or that the master had given them the gift. And they took what the master had given them and used it and multiplied it for him because it was a good gift. And so it was the faith that the master was going to be who the master was supposed to be. So a lot of times we make big deals about, well, I don't have a lot, or man, that person has so much more than me, and so they should give more because I have less, and so we need to, and Jesus saying that's just, it's not the way to view it. It's not about how much you have. Once again, it's about being faithful with what you do have. Mother Teresa says this, holiness, we love that word around here, does not consist in doing extraordinary things. It consists in accepting with a smile what Jesus sends us. It consists in accepting and following the will of God. And listen to this, Mother Teresa again. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. So this isn't about how much you have. It's not about how much the other person has. It's not about, well, they can sing way better than me. Yeah, I get it. My wife blows me away, right? And I get that part. So she has way more talent than me. It's not about being able to play it. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about looking at God and saying, thank you, God, for what I do have. And I am willing, because I view everything as I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So part of the joy comes from realizing what God has given us. Sometimes we're so focused on what other people have that we can't even appreciate and enjoy what God has given us. We're so focused on, man, I wish I had that or that or that, or man, did you see that car? Did you see that house? Or did you see, woo, that guy got an airplane. So what? God's giving you what you have. Shouldn't that be a time of celebration, a time of excitement that God has so blessed us? Because there are a lot of people who don't have. So the joy comes in viewing it as a gift, and the tragedy of the servant with the one comes when he buries it. He does not do business with it. The master did not consume his time and thought. He buried it so that it was out of his life. He didn't have to spend time with it. He didn't have to think about it. It was all about his own living. No indication that he did anything bad. He was evil. But he didn't do what God had called him to do. Once again, Stephen Manley, he wants us to be excited about the gift. And then Stephen Manley says this on the screen: we must not keep the gift of one talent hidden or buried in some low-risk spiritual dungeon. Oh, this is good. Where you don't smoke, drink, and dance or swear. Because it's also the dungeon where you don't ever win anyone to Jesus. And you don't celebrate. And you never come to the party. Ooh. Yeah, but Jesus, Jeremy, we got it all together. Let's just hunker down and let's just be our own thing. That's great. And we can sing and have a lot of fun. But man, I'd rather reach some people. I'd rather take what we have and let's go bless people. Let's go be the holy people that God's called us to be in the streets and the highways and the byways, wherever he finds us. And let's just see what God might want to do. Now, we talk about talent and we talk about money, that's actually a measure of money. I think, and we use this language a lot around here, that God wants us to use our time, our talent, and our treasure. Our time, our talent, and our treasure. That God's given us all three of those things. You are here this morning because God gave you more time. You are sitting in this pew because you have more time to live for him. What you do with that time is a big deal. You're here this morning because God has given you a talent. You say, I don't have a lot of talent. If you're breathing, we can use you. Anybody can talk to another person and encourage that person and be a part of that person. And you have treasure. Say, yeah, I don't have a whole lot, Jeremy, in times. I get it, but you eat. Are you asking me to not eat? No, I'm not asking you not to eat. But I'm telling you to be faithful with what God has given you. And I promise you that if you're faithful with what God has given you, you're going to be amazed at what he does in your life. Amazed. I'm going to invite the finance team, or whoever's going to come and speak, to come and let's come into the table here. Now, this isn't the Pharisees. We don't need to play the Imperial March so the finance team comes up. They're not the bad guys. They're the good guys. And I am so proud to serve with these guys. And they do a great job and have brought us through a lot of things together. There's 4 chairs, but if you want to come up, you can get a stool, Ryan. Ryan's part of the finance team as well. I just want you to see them. I want you to pray for them. They have a hard job, and they take it very seriously, and they don't take it lightly. And so I'm just going to ask them a few questions, and some of them are going to talk to us a little bit, and we'll go from there and see what happens. Don't break my chair. After Easter, I'm going to need that again. So whoever's speaking, if you pick up a mic, who wants to talk about some of the concerns for our church right now? I'm telling you, this is a hard job, but they're very it's very good.
Can I
Greg,
say one positive first?
please do.
All right, huge positive, I think, from the board standpoint, from the finance committee standpoint, is we've, of course, beginning of our fiscal year, we established a budget, and over this past year, we've been able to we've tried to decrease how much we've planned to spend. We've spent $1,000 less per month than what we originally budgeted for this year. So I feel like that's a huge accomplishment for us. If we can toot our own horn a little bit. Just to let you know that we're trying to be as responsible and as smart with you we can with the money that you guys provide us each and every week. So again, just thank you for what you do provide us. And again, we're trying to do the best we can to manage that money well for this church and for God. Comes with a few concerns. There are a few things that have come up for us. So even though we've cut back how much we've been spending, we're still coming up short about $1,000 a month over this past year. And so we've been able to pay to get the lights on, keep the lights on, keep the air conditioning running, the heat going. We've been able to pay those bills. But in order to pay those bills, we've had to dip into some other funds, including the kids fund and our building fund, in order to pay for those bills. So that's a huge concern to us too, because we have drained, because we've had to dip into those funds, is because we've also drained the savings account that we've originally had. So money continues to dwindle down each month because we're not bringing in as much as we need just to pay for our general bills. And then in turn, when it comes to the district budgets, praise the Lord, our faith promise is up to date, so we have that money, which is huge, because you guys have pledged that money to go towards specific things. And so when you pledge to go toward faith promise, we're going to make sure that money goes toward that. But when it comes to the other district budgets, we're about 6 months behind, which is totaling about $10,000. So we're running a little behind there. At least we're able to keep the lights on, the heat going, but it is a concern that each month we're continuing to run a little short on what we need to make sure we can meet all of our budgets.
And some of that's come. Talk a little bit about. We were running behind on a few other things, and so we caught those up, and we had some potential late fees and what that looked like. And so this year's kind of been a figuring out year. Was that fair to say? Somebody want to speak to that? Chuck, you want to talk to that a little bit? There's a mic right over there.
Well, I think it's kind of been hard to see where we're really at financially, and we've kind of switched to a different finance program, that's kind of helping to keep us more aware of where we are, where things are being spent, and so we can go and look at each month and see what the expenditures are. We're able to keep a very good track of what's coming in, and then how far we're either over 1 month or falling short. And so,
and it's just been recently, like even this past month, that I think we got a grasp.
Right. I mean, so I started in September, and I'm just now feeling like we're finally at a point where we can see where we as a church are financially to give real numbers.
Good. Somebody talk a little bit about, and what I love about these guys, and we had a meeting this past week, and I was so excited because they're really looking for what could be, what could happen in our church. And don't talk about numbers just yet, but maybe you were telling me about potentially what you would like to see, and what you would like, and if anybody else wants to talk to that as well. So maybe some goals for our church and the body and what that means. So somebody pick up a mic and speak to that.
One instance that was brought up when we were talking about giving and what a little bit would do, and I think it will be, we'll show later, but a youth minister would be huge. And that seems like a really far out there, reaching out there type dream, but it's way more realistic than I think we think it is. The numbers are not that hard to be able to achieve, to be able to bring a youth minister on board. That would be one goal.
I would love to see that building over there paid off. That alone could really free us up to be able to do a lot of things. So that's my dream.
Good. Anything else? We look at it and you think, oh man, we're behind. We are in conversations with our district, and so we are working on all of what that looks like. And so nobody's going to get in trouble. And We're just figuring out what it looks like for us at this point. I asked Chuck to share, and Rachel is going to come up. If you want to just maybe come sit on the front pew. Just a personal story, maybe about giving and what that looked like. If you want to do that at the time, that'd be awesome. Use the mic though.
So Jen and I were married in 1996, and when we came together, we brought 2 sets of bills together. And I left my job to join her where she was living because she had a really good job. But like I said, we brought our bills together, and there was a problem. When we paid our bills, we literally had depending on the week, we had $40 to $60 left per week. So that was not tithing yet. And so I really struggled with this issue because I kind of grew up with this mentality that you've got to give 10%, you've got to give 10%. And the $40 or $60 that we had left over wasn't even 10%. And so I'm just like, and I anguished over this. And I was just like crying out to the Lord, I want to give, but if we give, we have no groceries, we have no gas to get back and forth to work, or for me to go out and look for work. So I began to search the scriptures, and interestingly, we see the 10th in the Old Testament, but when Jesus comes along in the New Testament, what we see is Jesus asking about our heart. And as I was looking for an answer and what to do, the Lord gave me this passage in 2 Corinthians 9 at a time that I really needed it. I'm going to share it with you this morning. It's 2 Corinthians 9, and it's verse 8. And it says, verse 7. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. So let each person give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver. The Lord, I wanted to give. I didn't have the 10th that I'd always been told that I had to give. And so Jen and I just committed at that time. This is not, I'm not preaching a prosperity gospel. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just at this time in our lives, this is how God worked for us. Jen and I committed, all right, we were going to give $5 a week. $5 a week to the Lord. And we began to do that, and we were glad to give it. Like I said, I had a giving heart. I wanted to give. I grew up in a church where people in the church were constantly doing things for me to make sure that I could be a part of the activities and things that were going on in the church. And I saw that, and that's what I wanted to be. That's how I wanted to live. And so we started with that $5, giving every week. Well, then, I got a job, but I had to travel an hour to get a job, and Jen was leaving her job, so now we were making less money. But yet, we began to increase in our giving. That only works in God's economy. That only works when we step out in faith and just say, Lord, I want to give. I want to do what you want me to do. And so here, we started with $5. And now, and this isn't to brag, but let me just tell you, we give way beyond that now, above 10%, way beyond. And not because we're trying to buy any favors or anything like that, because we know what it is to trust God with what little he has given us. And we continue to reap not only the blessing, the financial blessing, but spiritual growth. When we lost our daughter a few years ago, if we had not been walking with the Lord, we would not have been able to get through that time in our lives. That God was working and he was changing us. And then our talent, we're out there in the park every summer. We try to be active doing things within the church. That's not us. That's because of what God's doing in us. And so I promise you, if you will trust God with a little, and it's not just money, maybe it's stepping out in faith to get involved in the church and doing something. God will honor your faithfulness to him, and he will pour out blessing that you cannot
Rachel, come and share with us.
I guess my story has to do with when I was a single mom. To kind of give you background information, about 2009. 2009, my first husband, Greg, and this is not to bash him or anything because he's still the girl's dad and God loves him. But he was an alcoholic. And so I used that time and we were sitting back on Wednesday night service and I couldn't get up. And Esther and I think Pastor Cindy came and sat beside me and I told him. And I said, at this time, God has to show who he is. I got to trust him, okay? So that whole 2 years, 2.5 years, the next 2.5 years, I used that and I constantly prayed and what are we doing? What are we doing? And meanwhile, while I'm trying to get more involved in church because, this is where my trust is and everything, it was going away. It turns out that my first husband lost his job July 13th. I didn't know until September 16th it was because he was having an affair with an employee. And so he was a bigwig, kind of where he was. And I was I had changed career. I used to work in the lab at the hospital, but now I was a science teacher. And first year teachers, we don't make money. And so here I was, boom, a third of the income, but still the bills were there. And also in all the bills that go along with all that process. And it was a long, drawn-out process, the whole divorce thing, because I don't know what was going on exactly, but that has to be paid. My dad even made a comment, well, you had everything break down. I had washing machines break down. I had a car. I remember couple months after I filed and our finances were truly being separated at this point, Jessica's car had broke down. I just fixed it, and on the way to Steichman's to pick up her car, my engine blew in the car that she was driving. So, and then we also had this big tax thing because of the divorce, and then what else did I have going on? I think my dishwasher died, but I have 2 daughters, so we're good there for a little bit, and so constantly there's a lot of things that would go wrong. And I remember that first time that I went to the grocery store and I didn't have enough money to pay for it, so I used it with a credit card. To me, my rule is unless I know I can pay it something with a credit card, I'm not allowed to pay it. That's my personal rule. And I couldn't. And so I'm like, God, please help me. But this whole time, I have been tithing, and what had been going on, and my parents were great examples at tithing. They always tithe, and that was their first things they did before they even wrote out the bills. So what happened is, before all this was going on, I started. Not only was I teaching at the high school at Vantage Career Center, but I was also got a job. They called me and said, "Hey, would you like to teach?" Because I had just finished my master's at Defiance College. Hey, well, you want to teach an adult ed science class? Cool, okay. Then I got a call about 2 months after I found out what was all going on with my husband. Ironically, at the place he used to work, hey, you used to work at the lab. Do you want to work PRN? Wow. People were calling me 6-7 years ago when the economy was in the toilet to offer me a job. And so at one time I was working 3 jobs. But somehow it managed. Sometimes once in a while would add the numbers up. It didn't add up how everything got paid. And every now and then it is something that you have to ask yourself, who are you trusting? Are you trusting in people? Because that could all go away. No matter what, you love your spouse, but for whatever reason, death or whatever, that could all go away, injury, whatever, or your job's in the toilet or whatever, but you got to trust who you're going to trust. And every month, every week, we do that. And I am so happy with the spouse I had about 2 months ago. We even had this conversation because we're a little tight. What are we going to do? He goes, pay your tithe. So God is faithful. And it says, and I'm being a science person, in Malachi it says, test me in this. So I'm like, okay, I'm testing you. And he will provide. Test him, because he says test him. So try it. If you've never tithed before in your life, I ask you to try it. Just maybe a little bit at first. But until then you'll find out when you get your bank statement, when you get the statement from the church, like, wow, you did even better than that. Woohoo! So, but we're still able to eat. My girls are doing well. My goal was to get the girls through the school, and somehow God has allowed me to do it. I have one graduating from college. Somehow God made that work out with the finances as well. Did I ever not do stuff because of finances? Yes. Did I had to wait a while before I got that dishwasher. I had to, in fact, I remember it was right before summer, and they called, and somebody was on vacation, so I got to work a whole week. And then this guy who never gets sick got sick, so I had to work another whole week. So God provided, and it was amazing. It wasn't right away. Sometimes I had to wait a week or 2 months or whatever, but he would give the call and stuff would show up. Somehow things got paid. So trust in the Lord, and He will do it for you.
So good. So good. Thank you. So here's what's cool. You may say, I already give. That's awesome. But what we are really wanting is to show you is that if you don't give, and how much a little can make a big difference. How much? And so Greg is going to run us through some numbers to show us that if you're not currently giving, if you are, we bless you. We're not asking you to give more unless God's asking you to give more, but we're not. We want you, if you're not currently giving, this is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind when you ran these numbers for me. So Greg, help us out here.
So our last committee meeting, we talked about, what if. So roughly, we have about 75 families / units that regularly come to church, and about 50 of those tithe on a regular basis. So there's about 25 that do not. And so we came up with these numbers. So if 25 families gave $10 a week, what would that be? For the year, it would be $13,000. And I think off right away, there's our district budgets. Paid in full. We're good. Just with $10 a week. Or what if it was $20 a week? $20 a week comes out to $26,000 a year. And again, we talk about potentially a music director, a youth pastor. Do we pay more off on the debt on the building that we have? So many more opportunities. Can we beef up a rainy day fund in case a furnace goes out? And then the big one, $50 a week. So if we gave $50 a week, so 25 people gave $50 a week for a year, that would equal out to $65,000. I'm thinking, what a blessing that can be for this church. What a blessing that can be for those individuals, for how faithful God will continue to be. Not just because they give, but because they want to bless others with what God has blessed them with. And that is the thing. It's not about me just getting a blessing because I tithe. It's because I want to bless others with what God has given me. And I think, so many of us could testify to that. And I think how many others, maybe that aren't giving, could testify to that in the future. So again, just consider it. Again, just that little amount can make a humongous difference in what we're doing here in this church and what we could do to reach this community alone.
Sure. 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 Well, let's thank these guys for the work that they do, and they thank you so much. You guys can go. Oh.
Give me some phone.
All
All of y'all know Linda Ross, right? Linda Ross was a living testimony of God's provision in her life, and she always told us that she could not afford not to give. And I just want to take this back to it's not just the money. It's our talents. It's our time. We cannot be selfish with those things. We cannot afford to hold those things back from the Lord. He wants us to give those things so that He can use us. And as Greg said, not for us that we reap the benefit, but so that those out there that we're talking about reaching the community, so that we can be available to them. to share the gospel of Christ, because that's what this is all about. It's about reaching this community for the gospel of Christ. So,
That's right. Sure.
Whether it's pastor or whether it's us on the board or us on the finance committee, we have no idea who gives and how much they give. We're given a report of how much is given per week, and so we're also able to be given a report of maybe how many different individuals give. But we do not see names, and so this is not to call out any one person or anything like that. It is just we want to present you to let everyone know at this church where we stand from, especially from the finances aspect, because we do not want to hide anything from the church. If you have more further questions, please don't ever hesitate to ask myself, one of us on the finance committee. We will definitely help you and give you the information that you want and that you need. So again, please, this is not to call out anyone at all. Again, we do not have that information, so let's make sure everyone's on the same page on that. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you guys. You guys can go down. They work a lot. They work a lot, and it's cool because I don't have to go to the meetings, and I like that, and it's awesome. They've really taken it. Mother Teresa said this: "I can do things you cannot." You have that on this slide. I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot. But together, we can do great things. And then this passage from the book of Acts, chapter 2, says this. Next slide. This is the early church. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And then the last slide, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. We're going to sing a couple of prayers together and more stories. Sammy and Danielle, will you guys come up? So share us a little bit about how you came to our church and what that looks like and what it looked like for you guys.
Well, we started with the Treasure Hunters Club. I started taking the kids, well, I think it was just the boys then, just to have something to do during the summer. So, then I think it was the Valentine's party, wasn't it? That I finally got Sammy talked into coming with me. Maybe probably threatened him. And when we were there, he had sat down to talk to Dave Clapsaddle, and he knew him from choir. And
yeah, I just remember, talking to Dave, and he was saying things to me, and asked me about the Bible, and asked me a whole bunch of questions. I was thinking, like, man, this guy kind of weirded me out, and but some of the things he was telling me about, kind of struck a nerve because, let's just say, I always believed in God, Even when I was younger, I experimented with a lot of churches, and, let's just say, I lost my faith for a long time, and I wanted to find that faith again, and what Dave was telling me, and me and her talked about it many a times about, like, hey, you go to church, and I felt like God was calling to me, because I believe He always loved me, and He always wanted the best for me. I just, like I said, I lost my faith, and it was hard to get back on that path again. So when I went home that day, we both were like, let's do this, let's go. And so we started going to church, we started going here, and we absolutely enjoyed it. We'd leave here and me and her be in amazement, like, wow, that was, like, that struck a nerve with a lot of things, he's saying, and, kind of almost like it was coming towards us, Well, then, so we started, coming, and, let's just say that, like I said, I always believed in God, but, I had, I'm not going to lie, I had demons. And it haunted me for a very, very long time. And I got in some trouble, and I just remember, I'm sitting in jail, and I remember this guy right here came to see me, and I absolutely lost it. I lost it because I was like, wow, like this guy don't even know me, and he's coming to visit me in a place where nobody should ever come, and it really struck a nerve with me. And let's just say that, after everything worked out, and I was like, I'm gonna commit myself more, and I had meetings with this guy every week for a very long time, and he had to hear a lot of things that were going on in my life that I don't think anybody should hear, because like I said, I've went through a lot, I've been through a lot, and I'm not trying to have a pity party on me or nothing, but where I'm at now to where I was then, I feel good, I feel great. God has done such an amazing thing in my family. I mean, this lady right here, my beautiful wife, she had to deal with me for, all the bad times. And for her to basically hang in there with me, it means a lot. And I'm blessed to have her in my life. But, I'm not trying to go on and on, but yeah, it was a long road for me, but where I'm at now, I'm absolutely happy. I'm not perfect, and I don't believe no one is, but it takes, and I'm still not there. I mean, it's a journey, like you always say. It's a journey, and it's a long journey, but I feel like I'm going in the right direction, and it's all for not only Pastor Jeremy, but for you guys too, for being there for me and my family, and supporting us when listen, there's many times where I bawled my eyes out, and I'm a grown man, and I don't cry, and there's been many times I bawled my eyes out just because all the love and support that everybody here has given to me. There was no judgment made, and everybody, there's a lot of people, a lot of friends I know that think church are so judgmental towards people. Like if you do this and you're a sinner and all this, but in reality, this church is not judgmental. All you guys are loving people, and I love you guys all to death, and I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. So, yeah, that's where it was, and a lot of people don't know the backstory, but it's hard to talk about, especially when it involves you, and you look back now and realize, like, I'll never be that person again. And, God does wonders. I mean, He does. And if, just like me, I lost my faith. I got my faith back. But God has always been there talking to me. He's been in the back of my brain, saying, like, come on, Sam, like, come on. And I'm thankful. So, God bless you all, and I love you all.
Stay here. We're almost done. The local church is the hope of the world. It's been a while since we sat like this together, and this is kind of nice. Last point. Throw it up there. Point number 3. This is the biggest one of all. Point number 3. I hope. I don't have it memorized, so I hope it comes up there on the screen. I'll look at it on my notes. Proper view of God helps us understand what He's calling us to do. The last servant thought the master was evil and mean and hatred and judgmental, and that he was there to get him. And the other two didn't have that view at all. They thought the master was gracious and loving, and they were willing to do what the master wanted them to do. So the third point, the final point, the biggest point is you got to have a proper view of who God is if you're going to make a difference in the world. God's not out to get you. He's for you. God's not out to smite you. He loves you. And what He wants you to do is to have that view of Him. I love my wife, and it causes it, and I know she loves me, and it causes me to want to do things for her. When I'm fearful or when I'm afraid, it causes me to want to run and hide and not do anything because I'm afraid that person's going to get upset at me. And so if we have this view of God that he has a piano above our head waiting to cut the string when we mess up, it's going to cause us to run and hide. But if we know that he's compassionate, I have about 15 verses we're not going to get to, and from the Old Testament and New, that talks about how God is loving and compassionate and filled with mercy. Jonah goes and preaches to the people, and they all get saved, and he gets mad. And he looks at God and says, I knew you would do that because you're loving and compassionate and slow to anger. That's who our God is. And when we have that view of God, we will want to give and want to love and want to celebrate him with everything that we are, so that Sammy and Danielle can hear about Jesus Christ, and Matt and Robin can have hope in the midst of a crazy situation. And there's more of them out there. And they need the local church so that they can have a hope in their life. And we look at God, and are we fearful? Are we saying, you're a loving God. You give me every good thing that I have. I want to give it back to you. I want you to have meaning and purpose in our community. And I believe the way that's going to happen is through the local church. So I'm not going to ask you to give money. I'm going to ask you to be obedient to God, because that's what the point is this morning. Don't give more just because you feel guilty. You should give more because your God is loving and compassionate and slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. And when we have that perspective, we don't hold on to our things. We view them as gifts and we can give them. When we have that view of who God is, we understand that he wants us to be the hope of the world, the local church. God is love, and we're going to celebrate that right now. I know that some of you have